Him, an arrogant millionaire. Her, a determined activist. Do opposites really attract? Discover in this story that will unleash a storm of emotions. But first, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any news. Enjoy! The morning sun cut through Jack Steele's office, flooding the space with a light that seemed almost accusatory. From the dizzying heights of the 50th floor of Steele Tower, a shining testament to his ambition. Manhattan stretched out below him. His fingers drummed a restless rhythm against the cool surface of the Italian glass desk, a nervous tick he detested, a telltale sign of the pressure he perpetually carried. "Mr. Steele, your sister Caroline is on line 2, Brenda, his assistant, announced. Jack let out a controlled sigh, the sound barely audible, and picked up the sleek, minimalist phone. "Caroline, I'm in the middle of a critical conference call with Tokyo. What could possibly be so urgent that it couldn't wait?" He glanced at the holographic display, projecting real-time market data, a constant reminder of what was at stake. "Jack, please don't start." Caroline's voice, tinged with a familiar mix of exasperation and pleading, crackled over the speaker. "You promised you'd attend the Green Earth Initiative benefit gala tonight. It's a cause I really care about, and I specifically promised you'd meet my friend Kate." "Caroline, I've already contributed a sum that could probably solve a small nation's GDP to this initiative. I fail to see the necessity of enduring an evening surrounded by champagne-sipping socialites, feigning concern for the environment while simultaneously driving gas-guzzling SUVs." He pictured the scene: forced smiles, hollow promises, and the cloying scent of expensive perfume. "She's not a hippie, Jack, and you know that's a gross mischaracterization. Kate is a brilliant and fiercely dedicated environmental activist. She graduated from Yale with honors, and you, of all people, could potentially learn a thing or two from her about corporate social responsibility and sustainable business practices." Jack rolled his eyes heavenward, a gesture that Brenda, monitoring his every move via the discreetly placed security cameras, would undoubtedly document in her meticulously detailed daily report. "All right, Caroline, I'll be there. But I'm making no promises regarding my level of charm. And if she launches into a tirade about the inherent evils of capitalism, I'm walking out. Just be yourself, Jack. Honestly, that's usually enough to scare most people away." Caroline terminated the call before he could formulate a suitably cutting response. Meanwhile, across the sprawling urban landscape, in the vibrant and often chaotic heart of Washington Square Park, Kate Meadows stood as the focal point of a diverse and impassioned gathering of protesters. Her voice, amplified by a surprisingly effective solar-powered megaphone, resonated to the canopy of ancient trees. "We cannot and will not allow steel construction to transform this vital green space into yet another sterile playground exclusively for the ultra-wealthy. This park is our sanctuary, our shared breathing space, our collective future." The assembled crowd erupted in a chorus of fervent approval, a swirling sea of hand-painted signs bobbing rhythmically in the air. Slogans like "Save Our Park," "Nature over Greed," and "Greed Kills" painted a vivid and compelling picture of righteous indignation. Kate felt the familiar surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins, her unwavering passion fueling each carefully chosen word, each purposeful gesture. She possessed an unwavering belief in her ability to instigate meaningful change, one protest, one impassioned speech at a time. Hours later, Kate found herself navigating the opulent ballroom of the Plaza Hotel, feeling acutely out of place, like a wildflower stubbornly blooming in a meticulously manicured rose garden. Her simple, ethically sourced organic cotton dress, purchased from a local cooperative, felt jarringly incongruous amidst a parade of designer gowns and impeccably tailored tuxedos. Caroline, spotting her across the crowded room, rushed to greet her with a relieved embrace. "Kate, I'm so incredibly glad you made it. I was honestly starting to fear you'd had a last-minute change of heart. I would never willingly forego an opportunity to vocally challenge corporate avarice, even if it requires infiltrating the belly of the beast," Kate responded, a mischievous glint dancing in her emerald green eyes. "Come on, I'm eager to introduce you to my brother. He's been anxiously anticipating your arrival." Caroline deftly steered her to the throng of elegantly dressed guests, expertly navigating around strategically placed trays of delicate canapes and hushed, conspiratorial conversations. Jack stood near the elaborately stocked bar, a tumbler Macallan 25, a liquid asset in its own right, clutched loosely in his hand. He surveyed the unfolding scene with an air of detached, almost clinical boredom. His piercing steel blue eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly as he observed Caroline approaching, accompanied by a young woman with a cascade of untamed brown hair and intensely green eyes that seemed to radiate a defiant spark. "Jack, I'd like you to meet Kate Meadows." "Kate, this is my older brother, Jack Steele," Caroline announced, her voice laced with an almost palpable sense of hopeful anticipation. The atmosphere between them seemed to subtly shift, the temperature dropping a degree or two. Jack extended his hand in a perfunctory gesture, his grip firm, controlled, and undeniably cold, his gaze sweeping over her in a swift, almost predatory assessment that made her feel like a carefully labeled specimen under a microscope. Kate returned the handshake with equal formality, her unwavering gaze locking with his, betraying no hint of intimidation or deference. "So, you're the celebrated activist," Jack remarked, his tone laced with a polished sarcasm that bordered on condescension. "I've heard you possess a rather unique talent for generating unrest. I imagine the NYPD holds you in particularly high regard." Kate arched a perfectly sculpted eyebrow, pointedly ignoring the thinly veiled barb. "And I've heard that you possess an unparalleled talent for despoiling the environment in the relentless pursuit of profit. I dare say the penguins of Antarctica hold you in considerably less esteem." Caroline glanced nervously between the two, sensing the rapidly escalating potential for a social catastrophe of epic proportions. "Hey, let's all just take a deep breath, okay? We're all ostensibly here for the same noble cause, right? The Green Earth Initiative relies on the support of each and every one of us." But it was already too late. The palpable air of mutual antipathy hung heavy in the air, an invisible electric current crackling with unspoken animosity. Jack took a long, deliberate sip at his obscenely expensive whiskey, his gaze never wavering from Kate's, while Kate crossed her arms defensively across her chest, adopting a posture that clearly telegraphed, "Dare to challenge me." Both secretly wished they were anywhere else in the world, rather than trapped in this awkward and volatile encounter, locked in a self-perpetuating cycle of snap judgments and deeply ingrained prejudices. Little did they suspect, as they regarded each other with such undisguised suspicion, that this seemingly insignificant, almost accidental, meeting was merely the opening act of an unforeseen drama, a tempestuous journey of intense emotions and profound revelations that would irrevocably alter the trajectory of their lives, challenging their most deeply held convictions and forcing them to confront the long-dormant demons lurking within. Jack's high-precision digital alarm, set for 5:30 a.m., sliced through the soundproof silence of his bedroom with an almost brutal efficiency as he prepared for his morning run in Central Park, a sacred ritual to keep his mind sharp and body fit. The image of Kate Meadows, with her flashing green eyes and words laden with conviction, resurfaced in his mind, an irritating intrusion into his meticulously planned routine. "Pretentious activist," he grumbled to himself, adjusting his Bose noise-canceling earphones, a sonic shield against the distractions of the outside world. The park was almost deserted at this hour, a sanctuary of tranquility before the daily invasion of tourists and amateur runners. Only a few other early-rising executives, seeking a moment of peace before the corporate chaos, and a handful of homeless people huddled on benches, silent witnesses to the city's glaring disparity, shared the space with him. Jack ran with relentless determination, his rhythmic footsteps echoing in the morning stillness like a mantra. Each stride was a reaffirmation of his control, each labored breath a reminder of his resilience. He ran, not just for exercise, but as if he were fleeing from something or chasing an unattainable goal. Back in his penthouse apartment, a sanctuary of minimalist luxury overlooking the world, Jack prepared for another day of corporate battles. His closet, meticulously organized by color and fabric, was a monument to high-end men's fashion. He selected a perfectly cut navy blue suit, a subtly patterned red Hermes silk tie, and platinum cufflinks, his armor for the day ahead, a uniform designed to inspire respect and intimidate the competition. At the office, Brenda, his incredibly efficient personal assistant, awaited him with a cup of strong black Colombian coffee and an iPad Pro with a schedule so dense it would make any ordinary person collapse from nervous exhaustion. Mr. Steele, your first meeting is in 15 minutes. The board is eager to hear about the progress of the Oasis Residential Complex project in Brooklyn Heights. Jack nodded coldly, absorbing the information while quickly scanning urgent emails on his tablet. Prepare the updated financial reports, environmental impact projections, and regulatory approval simulations. Let's show them we can be ruthlessly profitable and conscious at the same time. He almost spat out the last word, a bitter reminder of his conversation with Kate and the growing pressure to adopt more sustainable business practices. The morning passed in a dizzying whirlwind of high-level meetings, global teleconferences, and multi-million-dollar decisions that would shape the future of steel constructions. Jack navigated this complex world with the calculated precision of a surgeon and the relentless ferocity of a shark in pursuit of its prey. Each deal closed, each contract signed, each obstacle overcome was a personal victory against the voices that once doubted him, a trophy to add to his growing collection of achievements. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, in the eclectic and pulsating heart of Brooklyn, Kate awoke to the soft, melodious sound of bamboo wind chimes hanging in her bedroom window. Her small shared apartment in Williamsburg was an oasis of tranquility and creativity amidst urban chaos, a refuge adorned with lush plants, recycled art, and objects found at flea markets. The gentle aroma of sandalwood incense hung in the air, creating a relaxing and inviting atmosphere. She stretched slowly, feeling the morning sun warm her skin, and silently expressed gratitude for another day to fight for her beliefs and make a difference in the world. Her gaze fell upon the stack of hand-painted flyers and posters for the upcoming protest against the construction of the Oasis complex, and she felt a wave of renewed determination flood her body. Kate prepared her green tea in a cast-iron kettle and sat on the tiny balcony, watching the neighborhood wake up. The sound of bicycles, lively conversations, and music coming from open windows filled the air. Her thoughts inevitably wandered to the previous night, to the arrogant and exasperating Jack Steele, with his expensive suit, Patek Philippe watch, and condescending attitude. Self-centered capitalist, she muttered, feeling a complex mixture of anger, frustration, and, surprisingly, an uncomfortable twinge of curiosity about the man behind the facade. Her day began with a free yoga class in McCarran Park, a vibrant green space where the community gathered to practice, socialize, and connect with nature. Kate guided the diverse group through a sequence of invigorating postures, her calm and reassuring voice contrasting sharply with the fervent passion and explosive energy she demonstrated during protests. Breathe deeply, feel the connection with the earth, release the tension, she instructed, feeling the energy flow through her and radiate to the other participants. After class, Kate cycled on her vintage bicycle to the local community center, where she worked as a full-time volunteer. The place was a constant whirlwind of activity. Children participating in after-school programs, elderly receiving medical and social assistance, young people seeking career guidance and job opportunities. "Kate, I'm so glad you're here," exclaimed Maria, the center's coordinator, with a sigh of relief. "We have an emergency. We received an official notification from Steel Constructions informing us that they plan to start demolishing the old abandoned building on the corner of Bedford Avenue next week to make way for the Oasis complex. We need to organize an emergency community meeting immediately to discuss our options." The name Steel made Kate clench her fists in anger. "Don't worry, Maria. We won't let them destroy our neighborhood and drive out our residents. I'll start mobilizing people right away. They won't walk all over us." While Kate frankly dedicated herself to making calls, sending emails, and organizing the community to resist the demolition, Jack was finalizing the details of the same project in his luxurious office, miles away. For him, it was just another lucrative venture, a strategic step to expand his real estate empire. For Kate, it was a direct threat to the social fabric of an entire neighborhood, an attack on her community and her values. As the day progressed, their lives continued on parallel trajectories, separated by a chasm of wealth, privilege, and ideology, but inevitably connected by a project that would put them on a collision course. Jack ended his day with an extravagant business dinner at an exclusive restaurant in Midtown, toasting with champagne to another successful deal. Kate finished her night in a heated meeting with local activists, planning resistance strategies, and vowing to fight to the end to protect her neighborhood. When they finally lay down in their respective beds, Jack in his 800 thread count Egyptian cotton sheets, Kate in her simple bed covered by a colorful patchwork quilt, both felt a strange sense of restlessness and discomfort. Something had subtly changed since that tense encounter at the benefit party, an uncomfortable awareness of each other's existence that neither was willing to admit, a spark of curiosity that threatened to ignite their certainties. The day dawned gray and rainy in New York, as if the sky itself was anticipating the events about to unfold. Caroline Steele, Jack's sister and Kate's best friend, was driving her car, the windshield wipers working frantically against a curtain of water falling. Her face was tense, torn between the anxiety of reaching the activist camp where Kate was waiting for her and the frustration from a heated argument she had with Jack the night before. "You can't keep supporting these lost causes, Caroline." Jack's voice echoed in her mind, laden with disapproval. "Kate is dragging you into a world of trouble. She doesn't understand how things really work." Caroline shook her head, trying to push away her brother's words. She loved Jack, but sometimes his obsession with success and his narrow view of the world suffocated her. Kate, on the other hand, represented everything Caroline admired: passion, idealism, courage to fight for what she believed in. Meanwhile, in Jack's office, the day was beginning with its usual intensity. He was poring over plans and projects for the Oasis complex when Brenda rushed in, her usually impassive face betraying signs of concern. "Mr. Steele, I just received a call from Presbyterian Hospital. There's been an accident." Brenda's words were interrupted by the shrill sound of Jack's phone. Caroline's name was flashing on the screen. With an abrupt movement, he answered, his heart involuntarily racing. "Jack!" Caroline's voice was just a whisper broken by sobs. "There was an accident. I'm in the hospital." Jack's world seemed to freeze at that moment. All the meetings, all the projects, his entire carefully planned life suddenly lost importance. "Caroline, stay calm. I'm on my way." Meanwhile, Kate was at the activist camp, organizing posters and preparing speeches for the protest against the Oasis. Her phone rang, displaying an unknown number. "Ms. Meadows? This is Presbyterian Hospital. Caroline Steele has been in a car accident, and you're listed as her emergency contact." Kate's blood ran cold. "I'll be there as fast as I can." The hospital was a whirlwind of activity when Jack arrived, his impeccable suit contrasting with the expression of barely contained panic on his face. He stormed down the corridor like a hurricane, ignoring the protests of the medical staff. "Where's my sister? Caroline Steele. I demand to see her immediately." It was at that moment that Kate came running through the emergency door, her hair disheveled from the rain, wearing worn jeans and a Greenpeace t-shirt. Their eyes met for a brief instant, a mixture of surprise, relief, and palpable tension between them. "What are you doing here?" Jack fired, his voice a mixture of accusation and confusion. "I'm Caroline's emergency contact," Kate replied, defiantly raising her chin. "She's my best friend." Before the situation could escalate, a doctor approached, his expression serious but reassuring. "Mr. Steele, Ms. Meadows, Caroline is stable. She suffered a mild concussion and some fractured ribs, but considering the severity of the accident, she was very lucky." Jack and Kate exchanged glances, a brief moment of shared relief before the animosity settled back between them. "Can I see her?" they asked in unison, which drew a surprised look from the doctor. "She's resting now, but you can go in for a few minutes. Please keep calm." The hospital room was quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of the monitors. Caroline looked small and fragile in the bed, her pale skin contrasting with the bruises on her face. Jack approached first, taking his sister's hand with a gentleness that Kate had never imagined he possessed. "Hey, Care Bear," he murmured, using the childhood nickname that Caroline hated so much. "You gave us quite a scare." Kate hung back, observing the scene with a mixture of conflicting emotions. Seeing Jack like this, vulnerable and concerned, humanized in a way she wasn't prepared to deal with. Caroline slowly opened her eyes, a weak smile forming on her lips. "Jack, Kate, you're here. Together." "Don't get used to it," Jack muttered, casting a sideways glance at Kate. "What happened, Caroline?" Kate asked softly, approaching the other side of the bed. "I was going to the camp," Caroline replied, her voice hoarse. The rain? A truck skidded. Jack clenched his fists, his expression hardening. I told you this activism was dangerous. Look what happened. Don't you dare blame this on me or our work. Kate retorted, her voice rising an octave. It was an accident. Please, Caroline pleaded, her weak voice cutting through the tension between them. Don't fight. I had planned a trip, a sustainability conference this weekend. Kate, I wanted you to go with me. Kate and Jack exchanged confused looks. A trip? Kate asked. Caroline nodded weakly. At the Green Mountain Lodge in Vermont. Everything's already booked and paid for. I don't want it to go to waste. Jack frowned, an idea forming in his mind. It was madness, of course, but I'll go, he suddenly declared. Kate stared at him, dumbfounded. What? You heard me. I'll go in Caroline's place. Someone needs to make sure you don't get into trouble, Jack replied, his tone challenging. This is ridiculous. I don't need a babysitter. Least of all you. Caroline smiled weakly, her eyes closing again. Perfect, she murmured. You two together. It's exactly what I wanted. Jack and Kate looked at each other, the realization of what had just happened falling on them like a bucket of cold water. They had been manipulated, and now they were committed to a trip that neither of them wanted to take, but that neither could refuse. As Caroline drifted off to sleep, lulled by the painkillers, Jack and Kate remained silent, contemplating the weekend ahead of them, a weekend that promised to be a test of patience, of convictions, and perhaps an opportunity for two completely opposite worlds to finally understand each other. Morning arrived with an uncomfortable quietness. Jack Steele stood on the sidewalk in front of his luxury Manhattan building, an Italian leather suitcase at his feet, and an expression of poorly disguised discomfort on his face. He checked his watch for the 10th time in 5 minutes, impatience growing with each passing second. When she arrived, Jack couldn't suppress an exasperated sigh. Kate Meadows parked awkwardly, nearly mounting the curb, and stepped out of the car with a forced smile. Good morning, Mr. Steele. Ready to embrace nature? Jack cast a critical look at the vehicle. Is this car really going to get us to Vermont? Kate rolled her eyes. It may not be a Porsche, but it's reliable and environmentally friendly. Something you should consider for your company fleet. Ignoring the provocation, Jack tossed his suitcase into the back seat and settled into the passenger seat, immediately adjusting the air conditioning. As they left the city behind, the silence between them was palpable, broken only by the soft sound of the hybrid engine and the occasional voice of the GPS. Kate, determined not to let the discomfort win, turned on the radio. And now, the latest news on the controversial The Oasis Project in Brooklyn. Activists promise to intensify protests. Jack abruptly turned off the radio. Can we please have a few hours of peace without talking about work or activism? Kate gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles turning white. Fine. How about we talk about why you really decided to come on this trip? I don't believe it's just to keep an eye on me. Jack was silent for a moment, his eyes fixed on the passing landscape. Caroline, he finally said, his voice softer than Kate had ever heard it. She always wanted us to get along. I guess I owe her that much after the scare she gave us. Kate nodded slowly, surprised by the unexpected honesty. She means a lot to me, too. But that doesn't change the fact that we disagree on practically everything. Maybe, Jack conceded, but at least we can try a temporary truce. For Caroline's sake. The hours passed, the urban landscape gradually giving way to verdant hills and dense forests. The initial tension began to dissipate, replaced by a reluctant curiosity. Jack found himself observing Kate as she drove, noting how she bit her lip when concentrating on a difficult curve, or how her eyes lit up at the sight of a group of deer by the roadside. Kate, in turn, couldn't help but notice how Jack seemed more relaxed away from the corporate environment, his jacket discarded in the back seat and his shirt sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms. When they finally arrived at the small mountain town where the Green Mountain Lodge was located, both felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. The lodge was a rustic and welcoming structure, built with sturdy logs and nestled among centuries-old pine trees. Welcome to Green Mountain Lodge. An enthusiastic receptionist greeted them. You must be the Steele couple. We have the lake suite reserved for you, perfect for a romantic getaway. Jack and Kate exchanged horrified looks. There must be some mistake, Jack began, but was interrupted by Kate. Actually, there's been a change of plans. I'm Kate Meadows, and this is Jack Steele. We need separate rooms, please. The receptionist frowned, consulting her computer. I'm sorry, but we're completely booked due to the conference. The lake suite is the only room available. Jack ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration that Kate was beginning to recognize. Great, just great. I can sleep on the couch, Kate offered, trying to be practical. Don't be ridiculous, Jack retorted. I'll sleep on the couch. I'm a gentleman, after all. Kate couldn't contain a laugh. A gentleman? That's news to me. As they followed the porter to the suite, the reality of the situation began to sink in. They would be sharing an intimate space for the next few days, forced into a proximity that neither had anticipated or desired. The suite was spacious and elegant, with a breathtaking view of the crystal-clear lake. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, and a king-size bed covered with a handmade quilt occupied the center of the room. Well, Kate said, breaking the tense silence, I think we should establish some basic ground rules for cohabitation. Jack nodded, his expression a mixture of resignation and reluctant amusement. Agreed. Rule number 1, what happens in Vermont stays in Vermont. No one in New York needs to know about this arrangement. Agreed, Kate concurred. Rule number 2, mutual respect. No sarcastic comments about activism or greedy capitalism. Jack raised an eyebrow. That's going to be difficult for you. For both of us, Kate corrected, a small smile playing on her lips. As they unpacked and settled in, an unexpected storm began to form on the horizon. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and the sky darkened rapidly. Looks like we're going to be stuck here for a while, Jack observed, looking out the window. Kate sighed, sitting on the edge of the bed. Well, I guess it's a good opportunity to get to know each other better. Who knows? We might discover that we don't hate each other as much as we thought. Jack turned to face her, an enigmatic expression on his face. Maybe, or we might discover that we hate each other even more. Lightning illuminated the room, followed by a deafening thunderclap. The electricity flickered once, twice, and then went out, leaving them in semi-darkness. Perfect, Jack muttered sarcastically. Kate turned on her cell phone flashlight, the beam of light creating dancing shadows on the walls. Well, Mr. Steele, it looks like we're about to have a forced bonding experience. As the storm raged outside, Jack and Kate found themselves isolated from the world, forced to rely on each other in a strange environment and without the distractions of modern life. Darkness engulfed the suite, broken only by occasional flashes of lightning and the flickering light of candles that Jack and Kate had found in a drawer. The storm raged outside, transforming the idyllic mountain retreat into an almost gothic setting. Well, Jack said, lighting the last candle, I guess we can forget about dinner at the lodge restaurant. Kate rummaged through her backpack, triumphant as she found a package of trail mix and some protein bars. Time for a candlelit dinner, Mr. Steele. I hope you like nuts and dried fruit. Jack couldn't suppress an ironic smile. I must admit, your obsession with sustainability has its advantages in a crisis. They sat on the soft carpet in front of the unlit fireplace, the package of trail mix between them. The silence was punctuated by the sound of rain beating against the windows and distant thunder. So, Kate began, breaking the uncomfortable silence. Since we're stuck here, how about a game? Jack raised an eyebrow. What kind of game? Truth or dare, Kate suggested with a mischievous glint in her eyes. But let's skip the dare part. Just truths. Jack hesitated for a moment, then shrugged. Why not? It's not like we have anything better to do. Kate smiled, satisfied. Great. I'll start. Why do you really hate environmental activists so much? Jack sighed, grabbing a handful of nuts. Straight to the point, huh? He was silent for a moment, as if organizing his thoughts. It's not that I hate environmental activists. I think I respect your passion. But I see so much naivety, so much lack of understanding of how the world really works. Kate frowned but refrained from interrupting. Jack continued. I grew up watching my father struggle to build something from nothing. He started as a simple construction worker and turned it into an empire. But along the way, I saw how poorly thought out regulations and misdirected protests almost destroyed him several times. But those regulations exist for a reason, Kate argued softly. Yes, they do, and many are necessary. But others are just bureaucratic obstacles that stifle innovation and progress. Jack paused, his eyes lost in the dancing shadows. When my parents died, I inherited not just a company, but a responsibility. Thousands of families depend on the jobs we create. I can't simply ignore that because of a tree or a vacant lot. Kate observed him, seeing for the first time the complexity behind the facade of the ruthless businessman. Your turn, she said softly. Jack stared at her. Why did you abandon a privileged life to become an activist? Kate smiled sadly. I guess that's fair. She took a deep breath. I grew up in a bubble of privilege, as you might imagine. Extravagant parties, private schools, trips around the world. But on one of those trips, when I was 16, we visited a village in the Amazon. She paused, her eyes filling with unshed tears. I saw children my age fighting against preventable diseases, families losing their homes to illegal deforestation, incomparable natural beauty being destroyed in the name of progress. It was as if a veil had been ripped from my eyes. Jack watched her intently, fascinated by the passion in her voice. I realized that all the money and privilege in the world meant nothing if we couldn't use it to make a difference. I returned home determined to change things. My parents, well, they didn't understand. They thought it was a phase. And it wasn't? Jack asked softly. Kate shook her head. No. The more I learned, the more I realized I couldn't go back to being who I was before. So, after college, instead of accepting a lucrative corporate job, I decided to dedicate my life to causes I believe in. Silence fell between them, heavy with shared revelations. Jack found himself seeing Kate in a new light, admiring her courage and conviction, even if he still disagreed with her methods. My turn, Kate said, breaking the moment. What's your biggest fear? Jack tensed, his expression momentarily closing off. For a moment, Kate thought he wouldn't answer. Then, in a low voice, almost a whisper, he said, losing Caroline, failing to protect her, as I promised our parents. The vulnerability in his voice caught Kate by surprise. Impulsively, she reached out, lightly touching Jack's arm. You won't lose her, and you're not alone in wanting to protect her. Jack looked at Kate's hand on his arm, then into her eyes. For a moment, the electricity between them had nothing to do with the storm outside. My turn, he said, his voice hoarse. What's your biggest regret? Kate withdrew her hand, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. She hesitated, then decided to be honest. Sometimes I wonder if I'm really making a difference. If all the protests, all the sleepless nights, all the legal battles are worth it. If I couldn't do more good using my privileges and connections in a different way. Jack observed her, surprised by her honesty. You do make a difference, Kate, he said softly, even if sometimes you're a nuisance to people like me. Kate laughed, the sound breaking the tension. Well, being a nuisance to people like you is part of the job. They continued like this for hours, exchanging questions and answers, revealing layers of themselves they had never shared with anyone. As the night progressed, the initial animosity gave way to mutual understanding, and perhaps the beginning of something more. When they finally decided to sleep, with Jack insisting on taking the couch, both felt different. The storm outside had subsided, but something inside them had irrevocably changed. Lying on the king-size bed, Kate looked at Jack's sleeping form on the couch, illuminated by the soft moonlight now penetrating through the windows. She wondered how a person could be so different from what she had imagined and at the same time exactly as she had feared. Jack, pretending to sleep, felt Kate's gaze upon him. He wondered how a simple activist could have shaken his convictions so deeply in just one night. The morning would bring new challenges and, with the electricity still out, they would be forced to depend on each other even more. But for now, on that silent night after the storm, Something had changed between Jack Steele and Kate Meadows, and neither was sure if they were prepared for what would come next. The rising sun painted the sky with a vibrant palette of pink and orange, dissipating the last dark clouds of the night storm, as if they were reluctant ghosts leaving the realm of night. The soft light filtered through the slits of the organic cotton curtains, creating dancing patterns on the rustic wooden floor. Jack woke up first, his aching body vehemently protesting against the makeshift bed that the sofa had offered. Every muscle screamed in unison, reminding him of the uncomfortable night, and the vast distance between the cheap upholstery and the perfectly calibrated mattress of his Manhattan apartment. He rose silently, moving with the caution of a thief so as not to disturb Kate's sleep, his eyes inevitably drawn to the sleeping figure on the king-size bed. She looked incredibly different like this, stripped of her activist armor, vulnerable and serene in her unconsciousness. Her brown hair, normally tamed into a practical bun or rebellious braid, was spread across the pillow like an undone halo, a slight smile resting on her lips, as if she were dreaming of a world where peace and justice prevailed. Jack found himself admiring the soft curve of her neck, the way the dawn light, filtered through the linen curtains, caressed her skin with an almost reverential tenderness. He shook his head, trying to push away thoughts he had no right to have, fantasies that crossed a fine line between curiosity and invasion. Kate stirred, her green eyes, usually so intense and focused, opening slowly, as if awakening from a deep sleep. For a fleeting moment, there was confusion in her gaze, amidst a morning disorientation, then recognition and, surprisingly, a genuine and warm smile that lit up her face. "Good morning," she murmured, her voice husky and velvety with sleep, a sound that echoed strangely in Jack's chest. "Good morning," Jack replied, suddenly aware that he was only wearing pajama pants, an item of clothing he rarely wore outside the comfort of his impeccably decorated apartment. I was thinking of trying to make some coffee. If you don't mind the quality, of course." Kate sat up, the sheets sliding to reveal a loose and faded t-shirt she wore to sleep, probably rescued from some charity event or local cooperative. "Coffee sound wonderful. Need help?" Unless you prefer to fight the caffeine apocalypse alone. Together, they improvised a breakfast with the limited supplies they had, transforming the luxurious suite into an impromptu kitchen. The electricity was still out, so they used the small camping gas stove that Kate, always prepared for the worst, had brought in her backpack, an item that Jack had initially considered ridiculous, but now deeply appreciated. The rich and full-bodied aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the suite, overlaying the smell of pine and damp earth coming from outside, creating an almost domestic and surprisingly comforting atmosphere. "You know," Kate said, carefully blowing on her hot coffee in a chipped ceramic mug she had found in a cupboard, "you're not as terrible as I thought. I mean, you're still a ruthless capitalist, but at least you know how to use a camping stove." Jack laughed, a genuine and spontaneous sound that Kate realized she liked more than she should, a disturbing recognition that made her blush slightly. "High praise coming from you, Miss Meadows." Their gazes met over the coffee cups, a subtle current of mutual understanding passing between them, like an invisible thread connecting two opposite poles. The silence that followed was no longer uncomfortable and laden with animosity, but charged with a different tension, one that neither was fully ready to name or confront. It was a palpable tension of attraction, the gravitational force of two different souls that, against all odds, were beginning to orbit each other. "So," Jack finally said, clearing his throat and averting his gaze to the panoramic view from the window, "what do we do today?" The conference was probably canceled due to the storm. Unless you're planning to organize a protest against global warming with the local squirrels. Kate bit her lower lip, a gesture that Jack found inexplicably attractive and that momentarily distracted him from the topic at hand. "Well, we're in the middle of one of the most beautiful natural regions in the country. We could complain about capitalism and environmental destruction all day, or we could take the opportunity to explore. How about a hike? Unless your Italian leather shoes aren't suitable for trails." Jack raised an eyebrow, accepting the implicit challenge. "A hike? With me? Why not?" Kate challenged, a mischievous gleam dancing in her eyes. "Afraid of a little nature, Mr. Steele? Or are you worried about getting your hands dirty?" Challenge accepted, Miss Meadows, Jack replied, an amused smile forming on his lips. Hours later, they were in the middle of a stunning trail, winding through a lush forest surrounded by majestic trees that rose toward the sky and the distant, hypnotic sound of a hidden waterfall. Kate led the way with surprising ease and confidence, her contagious enthusiasm radiating like sunbeams. Jack followed her, struggling to keep up in his newly purchased hiking boots, surprised by his own willingness to venture outside his comfort zone, and even more so, by how much he was genuinely enjoying her company. "Look!" Kate suddenly exclaimed, stopping abruptly and pointing to a clearing ahead. They emerged from the trees to encounter a breathtaking view, a landscape that seemed to have been painted by a divine artist. A crystal-clear lake stretched out before them, its calm and transparent waters reflecting the blue sky, and the imposing mountains around like a perfect mirror. It was a scene of wild and untouched beauty that made even Jack, accustomed to urban landscapes and panoramic views of skyscrapers, pause in admiration, momentarily forgetting his commitments and responsibilities. "Amazing, isn't it?" Kate said softly, turning to look at him, her eyes shining with contagious joy. Jack nodded, speechless, his mind flooded with a sense of peace and contentment that he hadn't experienced in years. He observed how the gentle wind played with Kate's hair, how her eyes shone with pure joy and admiration for nature. At that moment, she was an embodiment of everything he had always dismissed as naive idealism and impractical romanticism. And yet, paradoxically, he had never found her more beautiful, more attractive, more human. "Kate," he began, his voice softer and more laden with emotion than he intended. But his words were interrupted when Kate, in a moment of excitement and inattention, tripped on a treacherous root, losing her balance. Jack reacted instinctively, his arms enveloping her with surprising speed and strength to prevent her imminent fall. Suddenly, they were close, very close, their bodies pressed against each other, the world around them dissolving into an indistinct blur. Time seemed to freeze in that fleeting instant as they stared at each other. Both their breaths quickened, not only by the effort of the hike, but by an invisible electric current that ran through their bodies. Kate could feel the warmth of Jack's body pressed against hers, the protective strength of his arms around her, the accelerated rhythm of his heart beating against her chest. She had never seen him like this before, stripped of his executive armor, with his hair slightly disheveled by the wind, his shirt half open revealing a strip of tanned skin, a genuine vulnerability in his eyes that caught her completely off guard. Jack, in turn, was lost in the deep and hypnotic green of Kate's eyes, aware of every tiny point where their bodies touched, of the way the sun highlighted the delicate freckles on her nose, of the subtle tremor in her lips. Her scent, an intoxicating mixture of damp earth, pine, and something uniquely Kate, intoxicated him, obscuring his judgment and awakening desires he had repressed for so long. Slowly, almost involuntarily, as if they were being pulled by an irresistible magnetic force, they leaned toward each other. Their lips were millimeters apart, the air between them charged with a palpable electricity, the promise of an imminent kiss hovering like a mirage in the desert. The shrill and irritating sound of the cell phone cut through the moment like a sharp knife, shattering the magic that enveloped them. They abruptly separated, as if they had been caught red-handed, reality invading their world of fantasy. It was Jack's phone, ringing insistently in his pocket. "It's the office," he said, his voice hoarse and choked with emotion. "I need to answer." Kate nodded, trying to ignore the sudden feeling of loss and disappointment that invaded her when he stepped away, breaking eye contact. As Jack spoke on the phone, his voice gradually returning to its usual professional and authoritative tone, Kate turned to the lake, her thoughts in turmoil, her mind struggling to process what had almost happened. And more importantly, what did it mean? She was a dedicated activist. He was a personification of unbridled capitalism and corporate greed. A romantic relationship between them would be impossible, unthinkable. A betrayal of everything she believed in, wouldn't it? When Jack finished the call and joined her at the edge of the lake, there was a new palpable tension between them, a mutual awareness that they could no longer ignore or avoid. The world had subtly changed, and they were in new territory, a place where the old rules no longer applied. "Kate," Jack began, His voice later would contain emotion and uncertainty about what just happened. Kate turned to face him, her heart beating hard in her chest, each beat echoing in her ears. Yes? What Jack would say next could change everything, for better or worse. They were both on the brink of something new and frightening, an unknown territory that could either unite them forever or irrevocably destroy them. And so, on the edge of a serene and untouched lake in the mountains of Vermont, under the silent gaze of centuries-old trees, Jack and Kate found themselves at crossroads, not just in their careers or ideologies, but in their hearts. They returned to the city, the relief of coming back mixed with the sadness of imminent separation. During the journey, they avoid eye contact and barely exchange words, the reality of their different worlds hitting them hard. Upon arriving at the hospital, the reunion with Caroline is emotional. She's recovering well and is happy to see them together, but soon notices a palpable tension between them. "You two are so quiet," Caroline comments, looking from one to the other. "Did something happen on the trip?" Jack and Kate exchange a quick glance before averting their eyes. "Nothing much," Jack replies, forcing a smile. "Just tired from the road." After the visit, Jack and Kate say goodbye in the hospital parking lot. There's a moment of hesitation, as if both want to say something more, but the words don't come. "Well, thanks for the company," Kate finally says, her voice low. Jack nods. "Sure. Take care, Kate." They part ways, each heading back to their own world. Jack gets into his sports car, casting one last look at Kate in the rearview mirror as she walks to the bus stop. Jack returns to his office in Manhattan. Kate goes back to her shared apartment. The feeling of emptiness is palpable, and both sense that, although they're back to their routine, something fundamental has changed within them, a change that even they don't fully understand yet. Weeks have passed since Jack and Kate's return from a mountain cabin. Life seems to have returned to normal, but beneath the surface, subtle changes begin to manifest. Jack, sitting in his luxurious office, looks out the panoramic window of Manhattan. His eyes scan the urban landscape, but his mind wanders to the mountains. He picks up the phone several times to call Kate, but always gives up at the last moment. In her apartment, Kate absent-mindedly flips through a book on environmental activism. Her roommates notice that she seems quieter. She finds herself thinking about Jack frequently, questioning her previous prejudices about him. Caroline, recovered from the accident, observes the changes in both with a mix of curiosity and satisfaction. During a lunch with Jack, she notes, "You seem different, brother. More reflective." Jack shrugs, trying to disguise it. "It's your imagination." But Caroline isn't convinced. She notices that Jack has started to get involved in philanthropic causes, donating money for environmental preservation and participating in charity events. In a board meeting, he surprises everyone by proposing a new sustainability project for the company. Kate, in turn, seeks to balance her idealism with a more pragmatic approach. She enrolls in an online administration course, determined to learn how to efficiently manage NGOs. As the weeks pass, the changes become more evident. Jack starts arriving at the office later, prioritizing a balance between work and personal life. Kate, on the other hand, becomes more organized and focused on her goals, impressing her teachers with her dedication to administration studies. On a Saturday afternoon, Caroline organizes a picnic in the park. To her surprise, both Jack and Kate attend. They greet each other shyly, but soon engage in an animated conversation about Jack's sustainability projects and Kate's new studies. Life continues to move forward, each carrying with them a piece of the transformation that the other inspired. Caroline, determined to bring Jack and Kate together, organizes a surprise birthday party for her brother at a local bar. She invites all his friends and family, including Kate, who hesitates but ends up accepting the invitation. On the night of the party, the bar is decorated with balloons and banners. Jack arrives, genuinely surprised, and is greeted with shouts of surprise and warm hugs. His eyes scan the room, unconsciously looking for a particular face. Kate arrives a little late, nervous and unsure. She stops at the entrance, observing Jack interacting with the guests. He's more relaxed, smiling more easily than she remembers. Finally, their eyes meet. The buzz of the party seems to disappear around them. Jack walks towards Kate, his heart racing with each step. "Hi," he says, his voice soft. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Caroline invited me," Kate replies, a small smile on her lips. "Happy birthday, Jack." There's a moment of loaded silence between them, light years away from the tension of their first encounters. "Want something to drink?" Jack offers, pointing to bar. Kate agrees, and they move together through the crowd. As they talk, the familiarity of their connection in the cabin resurfaces, but now with a new mutual understanding. Caroline observes the interaction from afar, a satisfied smile on her face. Her plan is working better than she expected. As the night progresses, Jack and Kate find themselves increasingly closer, both physically and emotionally. They share laughs about memories from the cabin, discuss Jack's new projects and Kate's studies. In a calmer moment, Jack takes Kate to a more isolated corner of the bar. The air between them is charged with expectation. "Kate, Jack begins, his voice trembling. "I can't stop thinking about you." Kate looks into his eyes, her heart beating fast. "Me neither, Jack. Since we got back, everything seems different." They slowly move closer, the tension of months of separation dissolving. Their lips meet in a soft kiss, but full of promise. When they separate, both smile, finally at peace with the feelings they have been denying. The party continues around them, but Jack and Kate are in their own world, discovering each other and accepting that, despite their differences, there's something special between them worth exploring. Caroline, seeing the couple from afar, raises her glass in a silent toast, satisfied to have helped unite two hearts that, although different, complement each other perfectly. A year has passed since Jack's birthday party. Somehow, they manage to balance their very different worlds. Jack participates in an environmental protest alongside Kate, holding a sign and shouting slogans with enthusiasm. His expensive suit contrasts with the jeans and t-shirts of the other protesters, but his smile is genuine. Kate, elegantly dressed, accompanies Jack to a gala event. She animatedly discusses sustainability projects with executives, her knowledge and passion evident in every word. They exchange knowing looks, proud of what they've managed to accomplish together. On an afternoon, Jack and Kate walk hand in hand. On a beach at sunset, they stop and turn to each other. Jack takes a small box from his pocket and kneels in the sand. Kate, with tears in her eyes, nods affirmatively even before he asks the question. A passionate kiss seals this moment. Sometimes, love emerges in the most unexpected places. Jack and Kate prove that when we open our hearts and minds, we can not only accept our differences, but grow with them. They found a perfect balance between their worlds, creating something new and beautiful together. If you enjoyed the story, don't miss the next ones appearing on your screen. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel. It means a lot. See you next time.